Welcome, welcome, welcome. Good afternoon, everybody. Welcome to Office Hours. I'm blessed to be here with my co-host, friend, and mentor, learn.blainebartlett.com/LMM. That's the Mindset Mastermind. My main man, Blaine. How are you?
Hey, I'm doing really well today. I got some salmon fishing in yesterday, and I've actually got something on the smoker right now. So life is good.
Nice. I'm here in Arizona and blessed to be speaking on the road again. And it's so wonderful. Yep. And we are blessed as well to have somebody that's in the same space as you and I. And there's so much abundance in this space because the best way to get to where you want to be is to find someone that's already there and ask them for directions. And Cara Macklin is one of those people. She is an extraordinary entrepreneur herself and has a great coaching business called Caram. And I just wanted to welcome Cara to Office Hours.
Thank you, David. Lovely to be on again.
Great to have
you here.
Let's get. I want to start, Cara, with some more basic questions. There's so many people that want to be a coach, but it's a whole different matter to have a business revolving around coaching. And so, what are some of the nuances of moving from coaching to having a business that is coaching?
I suppose, David, I'm very lucky that first and foremost, I'm an entrepreneur, as you know. So I did the business stuff first and did the coaching second. And the coaching was really to help the business side. So I suppose it wasn't a difficult transition for me to then have a coaching business. But I do see a lot of coaches who are exceptionally good at coaching, and then being a coach and being a CEO of a business or a leader of your own business is two completely different things. I think two things are the biggest challenge. One is sales and finding new clients. So that you have to be proactive at that all the time in any business. And the other part, which I actually specialize in, I'm just about to launch another part of my business, which is helping coaches lead and manage a team. Because when they get to a certain size, then they go into this business for freedom, for a certain lifestyle, and they end up, in my experience, of being busier than they ever were, because they, certainly in the online space, they start to employ VAs, business managers, and lots of them, and there's no structure, rhyme or reason in terms of how they are structuring the business to set it up for success. So that's probably the two main things I notice.
You come off mute here. I'm going to go back and forth with this. One of the things that I'm intrigued with what you're doing right now, Cara, is bringing business development methods into that whole platform that you're working with. So just as you were saying, coaching and running a business are two different things, two very different things. And because I can coach a CEO doesn't mean that I am a CEO necessarily. So from a methodology perspective, what are some of the basic tenets that you bring in for the coaches that you actually work with that are actually developing their own businesses?
The bit that I focus on with the coaches is on the leadership of their team. I mean, there's better people in the space in terms of business development. There's a lot of people specializing in online and how to scale your business. So that's not my expertise. But it's really when they get to a certain size, they can't scale the business properly unless they build the right team around them. And I always start with any, coach or CEO. It starts with you, in the sense of it doesn't matter. There's no one right structure for any of us, or for all of us. Each person, you have to look at your own strengths, what you want to do in the business. Some coaches, how much income do you want to give away to wages? How much do you want to work yourself? So a huge amount of work with the coach themselves first. And then from that, we build out, okay, what is the structure and the team that you need? And then, techniques around how they find that. I mean, I suppose that has come from my background of nearly 20 years of running big businesses, where, for me, it doesn't matter whether you're a coach or you're in a healthcare business or hospitality. It all comes down to the people and the leadership in terms of how you scale any business.
And Cara, one of the things that I think you do exceptionally, and you've been awarded for it as well, is you bring great clarity, balance, and focus to a business. And those three things, ironically, what you specialize in, bring extraordinary confidence to a business. It allows what I call the flow to happen within an organization, which is so crucial when you get to a point of growth, which is so tenuous. A lot of people don't understand that. I have these markers in business. You go from 0 to 30 million with the same people, then it takes a whole different skill set to 30 to 100, another from 100 to 300, and now even as quickly 300 to a billion takes a whole nother skill set. You seem to have really mastered the clarity, balance, and focus to bring the confidence into that scaling from each of these different levels. What are some of the key lessons that you have learned and you teach to bring that great clarity that brings the confidence that they need?
I mean, you're 100% right, David. It's a very different skill set. And the first thing I say to people is, people automatically assume that every entrepreneur or everyone in a business wants to grow to the next level and the next level and the next. Not everyone does. Some people are very happy at 30 million, 10 million. Some people want 300 and some people want a billion. So that's a very frank and honest conversation with, entrepreneurs I work with first and foremost, because it massively changes your lifestyle. It changes the job you do in terms of how you run your company. So it comes back to the founder or the entrepreneur themselves. And after that, I genuinely believe no matter what size your business is, it's simple. There's the old analogy of if you can't explain it to an 8-year-old or a 95-year-old, you don't understand it yourself. So, I've run multi-million-pound businesses with, board meetings of one-page agenda. We have a one-page strategy. People think one page is simple, but you guys know in marketing terms and content, getting to the simple and the 2 or 3 words or the nub of an issue is very, very hard work. So I work with the team and the senior team and the founders very much around getting clarity and simplicity. And I think when you're, it's the old analogy when when you're going from A to B. If you're going from New York to Boston, that's the first thing to figure out. Where are you going? And then, okay, who's getting in the car? Which position is each person in the car? Have we got all the things we need in the trunk? And as you have said, once you get to Boston, you might need a truck to take you to Canada, and by that stage you might need a very different driver. That's probably the hardest thing when you're scaling a business. Quite often that what got you here won't get you there sort of stuff, and that can be challenging when you've really good people, but unfortunately they're just not the right people to take you to the next level.
There we go. Thanks, Matt. An interesting point, just using that analogy, going from New York to Boston, you gotta know where Boston is. One of the things that I found in the work that we do from a leadership perspective is oftentimes the leaders that I work with don't really know where they are, which makes it difficult to even get started effectively. And what I mean by that is, and this kind of goes to your point about, if you want to move from a 30 million to 100 million, in terms of scalability, for the sake of what? Where are you in your life to make those sorts of declarations? Is it because outside forces say this is attractive, or is it because from a lifestyle perspective, from a living perspective, that's important to you? Two very different platforms to build from. And if I don't know what the platform is that I'm starting from, I'm never going to get to Boston effectively. Yeah. So how do you work with your clients to answer that initial, where are you starting from question?
Again, a very honest conversation about what motivated them to start the business. What is driving this need for growth? And really, really driving it deep down, because you guys know better than me, when the rubber hits the road, you need that core strength and that drive very deep down to keep going. Because inevitably in any of these things you will hit very, very difficult times. And if someone is doing it for ego or facade reasons, in the sense of, well, the market says, or my friends or someone else in business is doing it, they won't succeed. So unless there's a really strong driver in their core as to why they want to scale and do things very differently, that would be the first red flag for me. Once you get that, yes, a big part of what I do is helping them get clarity on where they're at right now. It's, when you're sitting in the car, you're in the middle of the woods, you're running your business every day, it's very hard to get clarity on your own. Actually, I think it's pretty much impossible, which is why, I have my own mentors and coaches and people who just bring a completely different perspective, because they just see things that you don't, and it can just lift you out in an instant. So that's the start of it.
And Cara, being so young, you have to have radical humility in order to ask for help, and to have, I have a new saying, there's two types of people. There's ignorant people that don't know what they don't know, and then there's ignorant people that don't know what they don't know. The only difference between the two ignorant people is either humility or arrogance. The arrogant person thinks they actually know something. The humble person doesn't and asks for help. We have a huge problem in America right now, right? We've created, 40% of all money ever created in America was just created in the last 18 months. 40% of all money ever created was just dispensed in all history. And so, believe it or not, you really understand what, but the problem that really creates is a who problem. And, I think the biggest challenges that we're going to face in scaling our businesses, and we see it from every area, industry, that we don't have enough people. It's not even qualified people anymore. We don't have enough people to support the scaling, because we're supporting a majority of the world with a lot of our solutions. And it's a terrific thing for our economy. And I'm hyper interested in the investment that we've made in our economy, but I think we may have made it too quickly because we have a huge who problem. What are you doing to address, I'm sure with the clients that you have, this incredible who problem?
It's happening all over the world, David. Certainly in the UK and Ireland, hospitality, for example, places can't open. A lot of the industries we're seeing the same. I always say to people, you can't manufacture a plasticine human being. I can't create someone that's not there. I agree with you. I think things have ramped up very quickly and everything hasn't come quick enough behind it. So it's now looking at, I always believe that the best people are still within your organization. I believe there's huge potential in every organization untapped, great ideas. I work with entrepreneurs and that and say, look at your teams, look at your leaders, what investment, and I'm not talking about training and sending them away, a day's training. I'm talking about proper, real investment, and ongoing investment in the people they have. And after that, unfortunately, it's a very tough marketplace. So, I said it 5 years ago, it's hard to get people now. It was always hard to get good people. Even in a recession, every industry I've ever worked in. So, the days of marketing to clients is actually quite easy in comparison. I said 5 years ago to my team when I was a director of a much bigger company, our biggest job now is marketing to employees. Young people, as we know, they're very different in how they look at things, what they want from a business. So unless you're, again, not the sticky plaster over it, unless you've really got at the core of your business that you're looking after people, you're developing people, you're giving them what they need. I think someone said to me, the first time in history there's been 4 or 5 generations in the workforce. That's very, very complex for an entrepreneur and a CEO to try and deal with. But you have no choice. Otherwise you will not be able to compete. So that's what I say to the guys.
Oh, you're doing something. Sorry, Blaine. We have to get on to our next guest. I didn't mean to interrupt you. I'd love to talk to Cara, of course, all day. But I was going to say you were doing such a wonderful job in transcending. When you were talking about we have these young people in the workforce, I'm looking at you going, well, aren't you one of those young people? But there's probably like 2 generations behind you and two above me. So it is quite a challenge. But sticking. I love the simplicity. Because that's something that I really lean into is if you can't keep it simple, you really don't know it. And that simplicity, values, practices, understanding skill sets and desires and knowledge is so important. And you've done such a wonderful job. People can reach you, Cara, at caram.org.uk. Please come back. You have just a wealth of knowledge beyond your years. We appreciate you and thank you for dealing with our technology issues as well. You're a wonderful guest. Thank you.
Thank you so much for having me.
Awesome. All right, here we go. Next up, we have the JupiterOne, the captain, the king, the co-founder, the CEO of JupiterOne, Erkang. Zheng. Hey, welcome. How are you?
I'm doing really well. How are you, David?
Very good. I love the map behind you, and I'm going to start there because I think America is under attack, and we don't know it. And JupiterOne is a force to be reckoned with that will allow us to continue to have the freedom that we have. And because we have this multi-generational generational workforce, a lot of the leaders in our workforce don't understand how we are under attack and why JupiterOne is so valuable. Give us a little bit of background and position cyber attacks in America and the threat that we're under.
Yeah, well, thank you. So I think cyber attack in America, or just overall in the world in general, right? So it is a huge issue. And just earlier this week, one of my folks on the team shared with me this new data breach from Microsoft, right? So the Power Apps caused a bunch of new data leaks, and we heard T-Mobile had a data breach last week, right? So, my first reaction was, it's just another day in cybersecurity. I think the problem really is that we've kind of grown numb to this issue of cyber attacks and data leaks and data breaches because it just happens so often and so much, right? And I kind of look at some of the recent challenges that we're all facing. Right? So we're in a pandemic, right? So we're having COVID and all of these situations, and to some extent, it's been more than a year. So some people are kind of growing a bit numb to it as well, right? It's just when is this going to end? It feels like it's just another day in the pandemic. It's sort of similar. Actually, a couple of years ago, I gave a short talk locally here at RTP, and I call it we're in a state of a cyber pandemic. So I think it's very similar. In the cyberspace and the physical world, we're in similar situations.
I came across a piece this afternoon referencing the T-Mobile data breach, and it was the purported hacker that said, "This is who I am. This is what I did," and it was unbelievably easy because T-Mobile's cybersecurity absolutely sucks. I mean, now that's and this is, I think it was in the Wall Street Journal that this was actually published, and it may not have been the Wall Street Journal, but he was declaring, this is who I am, this is what I did. It took me a week to get in, which was the complacency around, and it's almost like it's a cost of doing business mentality. And I mentioned that just to kind of get your take on that. Is it a cost of doing business mentality? We're going to have it, we're not going to reinforce it, so we're not going to spend the money, but let's just write it off.
I think there's certainly a little bit of that. I don't think that we can entirely attribute that, all of these bad decisions and whatnot, to that single factor, right? And I think the other thing that we also don't consider, or maybe a lot of us are not getting exposed to as much, is that this is a difficult job, right? So security at any organization is actually a very difficult job. And I think it's, again, I'm going to use the pandemic, right? Our physical pandemic as an example, right? I think in hindsight, knowing what we know now, it's easy to go back and point fingers and say, hey, a year before we should have worn masks and have social distancing and did all of these things a lot sooner. And we should have done all these, we should have did all of these testings a lot more. And, whatever those things that we should have done, right? In hindsight is a lot easier to say. And it's the same thing with data breaches, right? So, once the breach happened and we knew how the attackers got in and so on and so forth, and then we look back at it and say, well, yeah, that particular path of what the attacker took was the path of least resistance for the attacker, and therefore the security must have sucked, right? Because of that, But there's I gotta defend T-Mobile or just any other organization out there a little bit, right? So it's just the security team has to almost do everything right, but the attackers would only have to do one thing right for them to succeed. And then looking back and say, well, you did 99 things right, but you missed one thing, so you must sucked. Right. So I think it's really challenging to see what really is the reason behind the scenes.
Yeah.
Also, it's far beyond the financial security. And so I know you have a lot more knowledge than most people. And I think even I worry about, what am I missing that can be attacked. You know, when they were talking about electric grids, you know, until something happened, I had no idea that we could, you know, be under attack, you know, military installations, or, you know, are there certain things that, you know, red lights, you know, is that something, you know, imagine if, you know, somebody gets control of our street lights and turns everything green, imagine the damage it would cause in a matter of minutes. What are some of the things that we should be aware of without scaring people, but what we should be aware of?
Yeah, all of that, right? So I think those are real threats, right? So threats to attacks on critical infrastructure, to financial, to medical. Right? What if you turn off the power to the hospital?
Well,
You know,
what if we turned off Netflix? That would ruin the entire morale of America.
Yeah, there you go. Well, I happen to be friends of the security, the former head of security at Netflix, right? So, and exactly, right. So there's a lot of that, you know, that's at stake. Just, you know, matter of convenience, the way of life, right? And not even critical infrastructure or people's lives at stake, but just, you know, the day-to-day operations can have huge impact on people's lives. So, you know, I think you mentioned something that's important, right? So that's also, quite frankly, why I started JupiterOne as well. Is what do we not know, right? So what are the things that we don't see, right? So you know, everything is changing so dramatically, right? So from a technology standpoint, what we have access to at our fingertips today compared to 10 years ago, 20 years ago are dramatically different. You can't even imagine 20 years ago what we have. And the same way behind the scenes, how these technologies are built today are so different than how technology was built before, right? So a lot of the foundations have to be rethought. So we have to rethink, you know, how we understand ourselves, how we understand the resources and the assets and the operations that we're trying to protect at a quite different level today, right?
You know,
With
that's
cloud,
I think an interesting point here, because a lot of, you know, when people think cybersecurity, they think of software hacking or hardware hacking. But when we, to the point of, you know, rethinking just the entire structure upon which basically our society is built today, the susceptibility and vulnerability to an EMP attack, yeah, that would knock, you know, everything out. How does that come into play in some of the work that JupiterOne does?
I think, well, JupiterOne, right? So to before I answer that question, right? So JupiterOne, real quick, is this data platform that provides visibility of cyber assets, right? So cyber assets in a very granularly defined way of resources that make up a digital operations for a company, right? So companies could be as small as a 5-person startup to as large as a 500,000 person, you know, Fortune 100 company, right? So we have to first recognize that every organization on earth, whether you're a car manufacturer or you're a bank or whatever, right, are becoming technology companies, right? So we're being remote, we're in the cloud, we're doing software. So there's a huge amount of cyber resources or cyber assets that make up an organization's operations, right? So whether that is power grid, you know, protecting against EMPs, or, you know, the bank protecting the transactions. And in order to protect that, right, so we have to get down to that granular level of visibility at these kind of individual digital or cyber or software defined elements, and know how all of those things connect to each other in order to protect that operation as a whole. Right. So going back to that T-Mobile example, is that, well, maybe there was this particular path that the attacker took that previously was unknown, and these, you know, software or these cyber assets or these, you know, cyber attack surfaces were previously unprotected or has vulnerabilities associated with them and whatnot. Right. So then to answer the second part of the question, right, is how does then JupiterOne help in those cases? Right. We then give you this understanding, or almost like a knowledge base or the Google, to help you understand yourself in order to do that.
That's amazing. So
knowing where I am.
Yeah. Well, go ahead.
David,
I was going to relate it just back as we finish up to, you've actually created a manifesto, a cybersecurity manifesto that now allows people to, understand and to gear up or down for whatever can be anticipated. What are some of the key components as we finish up in that manifesto?
Sure. I think that you can go visit it at securitymanifesto.net, right? So the key elements of that, right, is that not only do we have to rethink the technology that we use to protect ourselves and the organizations and operations, but we also have to think about the culture and the mentality around us in driving that security organization within the security function within each organization, right? So what I mean by that is more of a mindset shift. Of security used to be, we're all behind closed doors, we're trying to block people, we're trying to prevent things from happening and all of that, right? And we have to shift that mindset into security have to use data to drive automation, to leverage automation to help them. And security has to also collaborate and have more of an open door type of collaboration than a closed behind door type of operation with the rest of the business and with the engineering, with the business teams to define what they need to do. And it has to be easy and simple for people to adopt. Otherwise, you won't do it, right? So I think I look at security, a lot of people look at security teams as sort of the cops, right? So the police function. But I look at security teams as the doctor or the wellness function of an organization. And like, the wellness coach and is telling you, hey, this is what you need to do and so on and so forth to prevent you from getting sick, right? But it's also a collaboration. You have to be willing to do it yourself as the individual. And that collaboration has to be open and transparent and make it simple, right? It's like, for example, if I say, hey, you need to work out, at least 5 minutes a day, right? But in order for you to work out, you have to drive 20, or you have to drive 2 hours to a gym in order to do a 5-minute workout. Well, guess what? You won't do it, right? So it's the same idea. If we have to have this wellness for the organization, if security is that wellness, then it has to be easy for them to adopt so that they could do it.
So smart, and you have made it easy. CEO and founder of JupiterOne, Erkang Zheng, it's been a pleasure. Thank you for enlightening us. Go and make sure you check out that manifesto. Learn more at JupiterOne.com as well. Thank you so much for protecting us and continuing educating us as well, because this issue is, you'll see by our next guest, is going nowhere. So thank you so much.
Thank you.
Thanks, Erkang.
Great to be here.
Awesome. Great to have you. All right,
That's
last
good
but
stuff.
not least, we're staying on the cyber mission today. We have the founder and
Went
CEO
from enterprise
of
to-
Cyber. And I haven't heard of this before I met Cowbell, but it's absolutely an essential in doing business today, as we heard from Erkang, cyber insurance. Jack, welcome to Office Hours. How are you?
Good. I'm doing well, and thanks for having me.
It's good to have you here.
Sure. There's insurance for everything, but if somebody would have told me cyber insurance would be a necessity 10 years ago, I wouldn't even know what that was, but I would have said, come on now. But it is an essential part, even for mid-sized businesses, and eventually it'll be for everyone. What exactly is cyber insurance?
Great question. Cyber insurance has been around for a really long time, but it was in a different form. For it was what used to be called packaged policy to just protect businesses from data breaches. And it would come in the form of, if you buy a business owner's liability policy, it will come as an endorsement on an existing policy. But today, about, still small to medium sized businesses, about less than 20% of businesses go for cyber insurance. And it's about protecting your business on the other side of the event. If you have a cyber attack, and in terms of financial losses that one might incur. And it is become very essential because traditional sense cybersecurity life cycle was only about prevention and detection of cyber attacks. But now, and we see all the cyber attacks happening in the news for large companies. There's so many more happen for smaller businesses, and they go unnoticed. And some businesses don't even come back up next day or week after they have a cyber event because the expenses are so many. So cyber insurance has become an essential tool as part of your overall cyber security strategy that will allow you to mitigate financial losses, whether it's the first party losses, first party expense, or even third party liabilities due to the cyber event. And so the standalone cyber market has really geared up over the last 4 or 5 years, and especially last 9 to 10 months or 18 months, if you will, if you go back, the demand for cyber insurance has really grown exponentially. My favorite line is cyber insurance has a supply problem, not a demand problem. And yet this is only one of the two insurance lines that has organic growth. One is the life insurance, and one is cyber, because every other insurance you have to replace somebody. So that is why we are in this business. And I really appreciate you having me here to chat about it.
Well, Jack, I mean, I'm fascinated by your model because I looked into some cyber insurance a number of years ago for our organization, and it was to your point, it was a blanket policy. It was, I mean, it's kind of like, yeah, you go to Allstate, I go to, I mean, wherever I might go, it's the policy that's written, the policy, and it's a rider that kind of gets tacked on. And it was not tenable because it didn't address some of the needs that I thought we might be addressing, and some of the needs that I didn't even know that I might be thinking of. So we opted not to go anywhere with it. Whereas where you're at right now, if I understand correctly, you've got an AI learning, it's machine learning. I mean, basically, it learns what I need and then finds the policy. It's a tailor-made process that is very unique. Yeah, in the marketplace.
Indeed, and there were many other problems with, what you just described is a non-affirmative silent cover. As you know, every other contract we get to negotiate between the parties. Insurance contract, the policyholders don't get to negotiate because it's an approved contract by this Department of Insurance. And also the process of buying cyber insurance, it became so hard that you had to fill out this subjective, very long questionnaire that the answer would change tomorrow. And the questionnaire kept going, it increasing. Like today was 15 questions, then 25, and then 40 questions. You have a SolarWinds attack. There's a new SolarWinds supplement that policyholder has to fill out. You have a Microsoft Exchange attack. There's another supplement. So this is never-ending story. So what we had done, and traditionally we had seen that cyber insurance was really the premium was derived out of how many employees you have and what's your revenue. And as you can imagine, cyber risk has way many variables than an employee, and in fact, not many really depend on revenue. So the way we approach to policies, we offer standalone cyber insurance to small to medium-sized businesses. We have cut down on the process. We can get a policy in less than 5 minutes, and we rely on the continuous risk assessment. So we are currently assessing 14 million of the 32 million small to medium-sized businesses in US. And so we already have some trends about what their risk might look like, how the hackers see those businesses. And so as they come in, as the broker brings the risk to us, we're able to essentially underwrite that in a fraction of seconds or sometimes minutes, and be able to really increase the adoption, because people need cyber insurance as a tool in their cyber security and defense strategy with all of these ransomware attacks going all over. Yeah.
And how, last question, Jack, how do you make it affordable for small and mid-sized businesses? Obviously, in the risk assessment, I'm sure there's some huge losses that could, really be, even in small and mid-sized business, make it very difficult to mitigate that risk or share that risk within the assessment process. How do you make it so affordable for small and mid-sized businesses?
Yeah, and I mean, the average price for our Prime 100 product is about $1,800, if you will, for a small business. And I only mentioned that, first and foremost, it's people buy insurance so claims can get paid, right? And the insurance companies want to write those risks to make sure that there are actually no claims, because you avoid claims. You don't avoid paying claims, you just avoid. That means it's now becoming cyber insurers' obligation to help the policyholders to improve their risk. So how we approach is we actually provide them insights into their cyber infrastructure. We find the vulnerabilities for them. We offer them recommendations. We provide them with the right tools, discounts on certain aspects of the cybersecurity controls, and we help them increase their cyber posture as they go along. So no longer you can, as an insurer, no longer you can just write policy and call them at the renewal a year later. This is we call it continuous underwriting, right? And by doing so, it helps us get the cyber posture to a degree that now you don't have as many vulnerabilities and your attack surface is protected. And then you don't have all those exploits hurting you. You actually come out on the top. So that is why most of our portfolio, our reported claims are less than 1% of our portfolio.
Wow.
Which allows us to stay profitable, keep our prices right. Now you can always keep the prices in the guidelines that we have approved with the Department of Insurance, so you cannot go way too low or way too high. But honestly, the risk engineering, the claims handling, our data science, our machine learning model, that helps us get over in an ever increasing the threat landscape, get on top of these loss ratios, and bring good products to. We have 3 products in the market. We go on very deep and wider in cyber, so it helps our policyholders. They're like, for the first time, they have seen an insurer taking so much interest in improving our cyber hygiene, if you will.
Yeah.
Well, I love the way you take the lemonade approach of, hey, why don't we stop the claims from being made? Then nobody has to worry about who's paying the claims, and everyone gets value, and making that money is in a positive direction. Cowbell seems to do in a new space in cyber world of insurance, which is incredible. I love the reassessment. I've always wanted in life insurance. I mean, obviously they could never have it, but with cyber insurance, the reassessment is even more crucial than in life insurance. So where can people find Cowbell and sign up for their small and mid-sized business?
Yeah, so our model is 100% broker-led. We have one of the largest network of producers in the nation. We have about 8,000 producers that are selling our product. The best way to find Cowbell, you can reach out to us, cowbell.insure, and we'll hook you up with the right broker. Or you can talk to your broker about Cowbell, and the chances are they would know the Cowbell market, and we would be really happy to help our SMB partners.
That's
Thank
great.
you, Jack, so much. It's been a pleasure.
It's great to be
Awesome.
on here. Thank you.
Thanks,
Come
Jack.
back again. Check out Cowbell Cyber Insurance. You got it right here. All right. Real quick, takeaway for the day, Blaine. They want me back on stage. What's going on?
I want you back on stage. The common theme, Cara, Erkang, and Jack both kind of referenced this in one way or another. I got to start with knowing where I am before I can get anywhere else. Whether it's where I am as a business, for the sake of what do I want to grow, cybersecurity on both sides of that, both the enterprise as well as the small one. What's my risk factor? I got to know where I'm at. So just generically, I think it's a life lesson that we spoke to. Know where you are. That's the first step in getting anywhere in life.
I love it. And I think added to that, supplementarily to that, is the rule number 6, right? That we don't know what we don't know. Don't take yourself so seriously. And I think all 3 people, the businesses are relying upon the fact that we don't know. And there is an assessment that's needed, a learning curve, and the speed in which things are changing for Cara in her world of a business coach, and of course in the cyber attack and cyber insurance, that there's no way with the trillions of data points that are changing that we could actually assess what's going to happen tomorrow. We can only do our best to mitigate that risk, which it seems like all three are doing so very well with the humility that's necessary to do so. Thank you so much, my mentor. I learned that radical humility from you. Learn.blainebartlett.com/LMM. The best salmon and the smoker in the world. I wish I was up in Woodby to eat dinner with you and Cynthia, but instead I got to go jump on stage. Everybody, let's all reach out to Blaine. Let's join the Mindset Mastermind. All I'm hearing is rave reviews from all the people that have joined you, my friend. Thank you for joining me.
My pleasure. Always. Knock them alive.
Knock them alive. We'll do it. All right, Matthew, you got it. We'll be here tomorrow as always. 6 a.m., 5 a.m. office hours, 6 a.m. Clubhouse and training is BYOQ. You bring the questions, I'll bring the answer. I want to thank everybody for joining me. As always, most importantly, be kind to your future self and do good deeds. Thank you.